All right, this is like that is a metaphor for my entire freaking experience using this darn thing. For today's video, we're going to be playing with Google's anti-gravity coding agent, or IDE, however you would like to specifically refer to it as. Now, it was not my intention to use this at all prior to filming the video, which I had started doing, but unfortunately that turned into quite a disaster. So we can't move. I do believe I gave it a prompt that was a bit too difficult for it to handle in a simple fashion, and it turned into a complete disaster. However, the positive of that is it gave me a lot of hands-on experience with this. So where we're going to jump into this video here is basically after a complete failure in doing what I had asked it to do, which was basically to make a 3D web-based soft body physics demolition derby game where there would be a few cars, you drive around, you smash them up, and the bodies actually deform corresponding with how a real-life collision would be. Some things I noticed off the bat that I do want to talk about before we even jump right into this video. This does feel like a glimpse of the future of how I suppose agentic coding is going to look, because in one aspect, it does look like you're just chatting with a traditional model, like through the Gemini web interface or ChatGPT or Claude, whichever web interface. But on the back end of that, there is also an IDE bolted to it, so you can go through and see the code and things of that sort. First impressions are, in having used this mostly with Gemini 3 Pro High, it is extremely fast at writing code. When this is eventually not free, I do have some concerns in terms of how quickly this will rack up cost usage and things of that sort. But I will say one of the most impressive features that I've seen here is its ability to go ahead and run things in the web browser autonomously, look at the console logs of the browser to see what errors are happening, as well as take screen recordings and screenshots to actually be able to visually see what exactly is going wrong. If something is going wrong, that is immensely helpful in allowing it to understand things that go wrong that you see yourself. It just makes things a lot more streamlined and simple. So really, where we're going to jump into this video is going to be after a large failure of something where I had pretty much given it a task that was probably a little too niche for it to properly pull out. So we just decided to go on the other end of the spectrum there and give it something very simple, open to interpretation with very light reference documentation. So let's jump into it. I'm going to do something very simple. It is a one-sentence prompt, and I almost want to try something that would be akin to a image to video game prompt or model style function, if you will, where we're just going to give it the reference photo that we had generated using Nano Banana Pro to try to give it a visual reference of how we assume this game should look in our minds. If it spit this out, I would be quite shocked, but hopefully this kind of just gives us a little insight into how it goes ahead and uses the more visual reference of this along with a relatively simple prompt to go ahead and kind of design and build this game. And we can see right here it is definitely running autonomously here, where it's trying to go ahead and even just begin by setting up the development environment. It did encounter an issue, and it's going to go ahead and just try to fix said issues. I will say that this is kind of cool for obviously a number of reasons, but even simple, I kind of like the way that it actually autonomously fills in the checkmark things and it shows you here what's in progress. Again, as I'd mentioned when we first tried this in our failure result, the speed here is very impressive in terms of how fast it just does everything. This happens so much quicker than the previous result, which is definitely going to be due to a multitude of factors. First and foremost, off the bat, we just started by giving this a visual reference of what we wanted, and I will say it did do a great job emulating the health and opponents bar right here. Obviously, the sedans perhaps don't look as realistic as they did in the photo that we gave it as a reference point, but regardless of that, I wouldn't have expected that anyway. That would be something that would likely require custom assets. Okay, this is actually kind of interesting. So watch this. The cars don't move, but forget about that for a second. If we refresh them, these rectangular boxes that do look quite simple actually spawn into this world as like proper, but when they hit the ground, they deform. So the soft body physics implementation here is actually quite decent. I'm impressed with this. Now, things don't move. That could be perhaps due to too much friction or too much gravity or something else. But this as a starting point in the speed that it did, especially based off of a simple reference photo and a 2-sentence prompt here, was very impressive and kind of what I was hoping to experience Okay, so we got a game over screen here when it opened, as it was trying to just test things to see if the cars were actually moving. Let's view the screenshot it took. Okay, well, that's obviously going to be an issue. Here's our playback of the entire sequence, which is as we saw. I want to take a look at what it most recently said. Oh, wow. Okay, so again, this is the first I've seen of the new fixed version, but that does look like a very mangled grouping of cars, as well as a victory scene. It's saying it fixed the issue and the game is back online. We can just open this again to see like the specific walkthrough and things of the sort. I'm actually somewhat excited here. All right, this is good. This is, well, okay. It's a car game. You don't need to be that morbid. So there are some issues here. However, this is it did quite a good job with the soft body physics. In one of my other videos, I don't recall which, we had kind of tried something similar to this in a more hardcore like model shootout test. And they attempted some form of soft body physics, and it was not as good as this, not by a long shot. Now, obviously, I must say, I don't actually know how to describe the specific issue that's happening here, where it almost seems like the cars are not moving along the correct plane. A huge progress. Huge progress. So I'm just telling it this is a significant improvement. There are some things that still need to be fixed, such as the way the cars drop in onto the map, which just damages them before the game even starts. And then obviously the very odd control schema that seems to be moving the cars on axes that they should not be moved with. I have told it that it should be able to see these issues within the browser if it actually runs the game. Note, I'm keeping it in planning mode now here instead of putting it into the fast mode or whichever it was called. I do forget off the top of my head, but it does seem to perform rather eloquently here, at least in the planning mode, so I figure why not. So far, though, I'm quite pleased with the result we've received even so far. The soft body physics implementation is quite cool. I've always been a fan of things like that. And as I'd kind of nudged it to do, it is going ahead and just looking in the browser to actually try to visually see what's wrong here. Okay, so unfortunately, its screenshot here is just a blank gray screen. Now, I've noticed this sometimes happens where we'll ask it to fix something, and then unfortunately, it just makes some code changes, and then the screen just goes blank, as we see right here, which is very frustrating. So, okay, good. So in the most recent screenshot we see right here, the cars do actually load back in, and assuming that this was not taken immediately as soon as this opened, it does seem like they're not getting damaged when they drop down to the ground. So, okay. Let's go ahead now and take a peek and see if this is actually correct. Yes, but as we can see, I am trying to accelerate. The car does not actually move because it is, think of it as it is clamped too tightly to the ground for one reason or another, preventing it from actually being powerful enough to move forward. So the good thing is that there is no immediate damage, and even if we do refresh this, we see there are no deformations in the soft body physics right here, which is very good. So fortunately, it does seem that we are inching towards a at least complete solution here. So I'm going to try to phrase this simply, and for this specific task, I think I may actually just swap over to the fast agent because this should be relatively simple. So I'm just telling it like, dude, the car is either too underpowered to move in this gravity position, or it's too much gravity, so fix it and test it. In what has become sadly kind of a common theme seemingly throughout my testing of this, I am now just fighting with it about what I'm actually seeing, where I'm telling it it's just a gray screen, nothing loads. And then it's like, okay, I'll fix it. And then it's like, hey, everything's all set, go ahead and try it. And it's still a gray screen. So then I go back to it and say, it's a gray screen, you need to look for yourself. So hopefully we will at some point. Okay, good. I'm going to close the browser here so it can reopen it itself. And it will ask me, but that's fine. Good. Or we'll just open it itself. Good. That's what we wanted. All right, let's just verify now that the screenshot it took here. Oh, okay, so we have the playback available here. Good. So hopefully it will have identified itself as well, that I am not hallucinating. The gray screen does in fact exist. Okay, good. Well, it did fix the gray screen issue, but unfortunately the downside of that is the cars seemingly have disappeared, but that's okay. All right, now hypothetically, we have received a fixed issue, which, again, it's funny because, you know, the culmination of my experience in using this is people are going to be like, oh, you're a shill, Google paid you to make this video. I've been getting more comments like that lately, which is just ridiculous if you think they would actually pay me to make the type of videos that I make. Regardless of that, I am quite enamored with this because it's cool the way that it works so quickly and is actually able to go ahead and visibly see the errors that are happening. I think it's really quite neat. It's just so darn frustrating right now. And again, this is something that I would consider to be in beta, especially considering it has free access plans right now. And there's not even like ways to, I don't think you can actually even pay for this right now if you wanted to. So it's definitely very cool in terms of looking at its potential. It's just so darn frustrating right now. But again, this is a look at something. I mean, 3 years ago today, ChatGPT came out, and now, again, it's like if the thing doesn't make a game like this, you're like, oh, you're a piece of crap. Versus when it came out, it's like, oh my God, it can make a retro Pong game in Python in one shot. So this is kind of reflective of the progression that will happen when I do judge this and say, even with all the frustration right here, I think it's really quite neat. And I personally very much like using AIs through the chat interface like this, which I get some flack for in some of my testing videos where justifiably folks are like, dude, you're making these things code complex things in these testing videos just through like chatgpt.com. You need to use an agentic coding thing. And this is kind of a, what would the terminology be for a combination of the two, if you will. So I'm going to try again to get this to fix it, but I may overall kind of wrap up this video sooner than later. You know what this feels like to me? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like that SpongeBob episode where the guy comes in and keeps saying there's no pickles on the Krabby Patty, and SpongeBob knows, like, I put them in there, and the guy's lying, but it feels like this, saying like, gray screen still, and then it gives me another Krabby Patty in there, no pick. Like, it's just, we'll see what happens. I'm mad now because there was one result we received here where the soft body physics deformation did seem quite awesome, and I want to play the darn game. I still can't move forward. Well, let's at least look at the side of the car. So that's cool. We do have a sedan-like design. I'm simply asking it a question now. So I said, don't change any code. Instead, please just tell me what line in what script the values for 1, the engine power are, and 2, the friction. Okay, so let's find this. And what I like about this that's very cool as well is you can just click on, this is almost like hyperlinked to that specific script, which is definitely useful. So we're going to have to go into the code editor here. Okay, and you'll notice I had bumped up the text size in anticipation of filming this video, which didn't really take effect in the main way we've been playing with this, but here's the more kind of IDE style visuals here. Oh, okay, well. You know what? If this is the best we're going to get, I'm calling it because I'm going to... obviously, there's some mismatch here with like physics and directions, but again, we do actually have a soft body physics demolition derby simulation where the soft body physics do work quite well if we can. Now, this is quite perplexing to one, but it's all right. This is like that is a metaphor for my entire freaking experience using this darn thing. It's so cool, but like at the same time, it needs work. But I mean, there's a lot. So let's just see if we can hit something. And you can see the body is deforming here. It's, it's just not right. Okay, well, oh, we can't show that because I swore at it because I did get a little frustrated. Okay, let's wrap this up. So I have been playing with Google's Antigravity IDE for a decent while now, and mainly using Gemini 3 Pro High. I will say the speed is very impressive. Another thing that is extremely impressive is the ability here to go ahead and autonomously debug what it sees using the browser. I think that is all very, very cool. For the generated result that we actually did receive here, we basically gave it a 2-sentence prompt saying, using this reference photo for how the results should look, create a 3D web-based demolition derby game with soft body physics. Extremely simple, extremely light, and the reference photo was this, of course, generated with Nano Banana Pro, as you can see by the little watermark here. So using this was almost like multimodal agentic coding, because not only did we give it a reference image to use to create a video game, but it was also able to go ahead and view the results using the Chrome browser integration of this, as well as the add-on that you add to the browser, which you go through if you set this up on your local machine. But it was able to just look at things differently than just traditionally like looking through the code. It was able to visually see things, which, as we saw, was quite buggy at times, but it is reflective of the future direction in which things will go. As I may have said earlier, I don't recall if I will have cut it from the video or not, ChatGPT came out 3 years ago, basically today, and back then, if it made Pong in Python using like a single result, it was like, oh wow, this is kind of impressive. And now it's basically like, you piece of crap, your soft body physics implementation is not working properly, and it is very frustrating. So things have definitely evolved, and this does look like a future look at the evolution of agentic coding. Now, if someone were to go to this point in the video and see me say that, like with this result, they'd be like, unsubscribe, or perhaps just not subscribe. So this is really cool, and I think it's worthy of playing with. I used this for a lot, mainly using Gemini 3 Pro High, and I did not hit any rate limits or anything. I did one-time swap over in my previous disastrous result right here to Claude 4.5 Sonnet. They don't have Opus here right now, Opus, however you want to pronounce that. I did pop it over to the thinking variant, and it basically fixed my issue by simplifying the code to such a high degree that it basically kept no like emulation of how I'd wanted the game to look. So this was the original task that I had actually tried giving it. You can see here the prompt is significantly more intricate. I want to build the browser-based soft body crumble physics game using Babylon.js. Unfortunately, it seemed like specifically asking it to use that, even though I wanted to make it more difficult, because there's probably less community documentation and discussion online, leading to less of that prevalent in the training data. Unscientifically, just an estimate on my part. It unfortunately just ended up as a rather large disaster. So I will show the ultimate end result we received for that, which if we scroll down right here, we'll be able to see is, oh, okay, well, again, we had a lot of gray screen issue there, but we did at times have some level of visibility here at least. So, okay, here's the thing. This was just not made in Python. It wasn't being run using a Python server. So we can just go into this right here. And this is what it ultimately ended up creating there. So not the best, but it did actually put like guardrails and things there. The ground was somewhat dirt-like. There are tire stacks in the corner. So the argument could be made that the actual visuals of this one were more in line with what we had wanted. But I did not initially start out there with the prompt, including the image of what I wanted. I added that in later, and it still just unfortunately was rather buggy. So I guess in my quest to not spend too much time talking in the end of this, overall, I would say that this is definitely a beta glimpse of the future, I guess could be said, where, I mean, the soft body physics here, if we can actually properly see it get a small dent without the stupid "you died" thing flashed in front of our face, it's actually kind of cool. And I may have mentioned previously, I tried something like this with soft body physics in one of my previous model testing videos using Claude Code and GPT Codex, and they were not able to make soft body physics as well. Maybe later on. It took a lot of tries. So it's just, it's kind of cool. And this is something that personally interests me a lot. I love like car smash games, to put it simply. So overall, this is going to be the result we're left with, which is, yeah. So that is testing of Google's Antigravity. I would highly recommend going and trying it yourself, especially considering I used this for quite a while and didn't hit any rate limiting. So if nothing more than just getting to use Gemini 3 Pro for free, have at it. That's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed and got some level of educational value out of my frustrating time in using this, and thanks for watching.